And we are now recording. Go for it, Mr. Steven.
All right, guys. So thank you guys for having me, and thank you guys who are here today just to get a little bit of insight into what I do, but also what you need to do as you guys are going to be breaking into this field. So I wanted just to share a lot of different things with artwork with you. But first off, let me just share with you guys. Let me make sure you guys can see my screen. Let me know if are you able to see my screen okay?
Yes,
okay.
sir.
Okay, awesome. Let me just see. I think I got this thing there. All right, cool. So first thing, just before we get started, I just wanted to express to you guys, since there was only 6 days left, if any of you guys are interested in learning more about character design and just the whole process and getting critiques and all that stuff, I'm actually running a Kickstarter campaign right now to just get all these rewards and a character design course. So if you just go to the character design, if you just even type that in Kickstarter, you'll see what that is. I didn't want to put the link there just because you probably wouldn't be able to grab the link. And the name of the school is the Silver Drawing Academy.com. So if you guys want to check that out. And also, let me just click on here. Also, if you guys are interested in just reading and learning from a book on Amazon, I have a book called The Silver Way, which is a comprehensive book on the art of character design. Again, for those of you guys that are interested in storyboarding, character design, anything drawing wise, because that's what I want to share with you guys today, the importance of making sure that you're really developing your drawing skills. I'm trying to, let me see, looks like I can just hit this button here and that'll take me to the next slide. All right. So as we're getting started, there's 3 major factors that I want you to think about even as you're moving into your careers. And these are 3 things that I break down. Number 1 is, I know you guys are in school and you guys are studying right now, but what you're going to want to learn and understand is the narrative. Just think about if you were going to be making your own story, writing your own book, whatever it may be. What is the narrative? What is that? What does that look like? It may look like, I want to be a character designer in the animation industry. I want to be a storyboard artist. I want to be a graphic designer. I want to be an animator. And you start to say, this is what I want to have happen in my journey. Once you've established that, the next most important thing is taking the action. What is the action? The action is, okay, I know what it is I want to do. So what I need to do now is start just Googling, researching, reaching out to people that do what it is that I do. Every single one of your guys' heroes, every single one who's working in the industry is all on the internet. They have Instagram, they have ArtStation, they have Facebook. You can reach out to them. It's going to be up to you whether or not you're going to take initiative to reach out or just learn as much as you can. And that's taking the action. It's not making phone calls, it's sending emails or putting together your portfolio and building that up so that you're ready. And the most important thing just to remember, and it's always the hardest thing to remember or really consider, and that's timing. The importance of making sure that you guys believe in the timing. It's not going to happen overnight. We live in a world right now where everything is so quick and so fast paced. And what happens, I've seen so many students get anxiety, depression, all these other things happen because they want instant results, and that's not going to happen. And there was a painter from the 1600s, Sir Joshua Reynolds, who said, excellence is never granted to man, but as the reward of labor. You're not going to get good unless you're willing just to really put in the time to do all this stuff. I want to just share with you guys real quick. There was a book called The Practicing Mind. Great book. I do a lot of reading. And he said, where you are right now is exactly where you're supposed to be in your work, is exactly where you should be given the amount of effort you have put in. Cheating discipline doesn't work. So if you feel like you're not the way you want to be right now, maybe you want to think about, how much time am I spending on social media? How much time am I playing video games? How much time am I doing these other things, as opposed to, let me really start honing in on what it is that I want to do in my life? Because what this is going to become for you guys, it's a chess game. You need to start just building your pieces, strategize, think about where it is you want to be, what you want to do, and eventually you're going to get there. but that's something that I wanted to share. And I want to share with you now what I didn't understand when I first started drawing. One of those things was drawing through. I didn't understand what it meant to draw through. And drawing through just simply means if I was saying starting from my shoulder over here, and instead of just stopping at my neck and starting at my neck again in the drawing and going from here, I'm drawing a line all the way through my design. You start to understand form building, and that's going to make your drawings really just improve upon where they are right now. The next thing is the construction. Just understand how to construct characters, how to build props, whatever it may be. It all comes down to construction. And the last thing what I didn't understand was feeling, and that was giving my characters personality and really just a feeling and energy within there. These are some of my early drawings. This was back when I was in high school. I graduated in 1990, so this was actually 91 when I was 18 years old. I didn't know how to draw the human figure. I didn't know how to really construct a face. I didn't know how to really draw a portrait. All I was drawing were outlines and contour lines, and I never understood what it really meant to draw forms and move those characters around. Lucky for me, I just started doing a lot of caricatures. That's how I started my career. I'll get into that. But as I started to develop, that's what got me hired in the industry. And these were just this was back in 1997 when I was around 24 years old, 23, 24. And these were some of my rough designs, but still no real understanding. Even though I got hired at the studio at that time, the director believed in me. I just didn't have the chops. And the thing that I kept doing, even though I was working, is I kept learning. That was the most important thing, is just to keep learning, keep growing, keep trying to get better as much as you can. And eventually, through all the years, I just start to observe. I'm carrying around my sketchbook. I'm drawing going to life drawing every single week. I'm trying to capture the human form, trying to capture the feeling. You can see here on this drawing up here, this is where that draw through comes from. Look at that line, how I sweep it all the way through here. I draw through that shape and I can build my forms on top of that, the lips, the chin, the nose, etc. And then again, just going into figure drawing class and just learning how to draw portraits and drawing and practicing all the time, discovering who my heroes were and practicing from them. And year by year, day by day, week by week, you eventually get better and better as you start developing your skill set. And that's going to be the most important thing. In this industry, in this world, what do people care about? They care about your skill set. They care about your talent. I never went to art school. I never, outside of high school, I pretty much went to junior college and I dropped out after the first semester. And then from there, I just knew what was going to be important was me showing people how I can draw effectively in order to work for them. And so that way they would hire me because they would believe in what it is that I could do. It wasn't just about a diploma or anything else written on paper. It's like this person is taking their artwork seriously. Again, whether you want to be an animator, graphic designer, or whatever it is you want to be, it's all the exact same stuff. These were my heroes. When I was growing up, there was no internet. So you're just looking at magazines, you're reading books, you're just collecting books. And these were my heroes from Mad Magazine, just from anything from, I love caricature was one of my first things getting into this field, was just learning how to do that. And that really took me to the next step. Nowadays, there's so much content out there. You guys know, on Instagram, on everything else, it's overwhelming. You go, oh my God, how can I compete? How can I keep up with all these people? The thing is, try to just find a handful of people that you really admire and learn from them. Maybe you like how someone does color. Maybe you like how someone does hair. Maybe you like how someone draws hands. Maybe you like the way someone draws caricature or puts energy and action into their pose. Those are the things that you just want to start to emulate and start looking at when you're doing it. The next thing that happened for me was when I was 18, I applied to get a job at SeaWorld in San Diego, where now I was doing live caricatures. And that's where my whole training came from. People would sit in front of me and I had to draw them within about 5 minutes. That's how you have to do it. And so it built up my confidence. It built up my speed. And then from there, I would start doing caricature parties where every weekend I was going to an event and people were paying me $150 an hour, $175 an hour just to sit there and make fun of them. But it was something that I learned to do, and I built a business out of it. And that's something where you don't always want to sit on the sidelines and wait for other people just to grant you a job or give you something. All this stuff kind of takes your persistence and your work, and having that go-getter attitude is going to help you just keep moving up to where you want to be. There's no secret to it. There's no magic to it. There's no pixie dust that's going to make you get there. Like I mentioned, I dropped out of college, and I knew that all people were going to care about in life in the art world was how well you can draw. Are you good enough? Along with learning how good you are, you got to have a business sense. I started to learn business. I started to learn about the value of art. That way I wasn't getting taken advantage of, because a lot of people are going to try to ask you, especially students, to do things for free because it's going to be good exposure for you. You got to be extremely, extremely careful with that, and make sure that you've just read between the lines and know what it's going to be for. And if you have any part of whatever it is they're creating, and making sure they allow you to share your artwork and everything else. So during this time, I was doing caricatures, but then also I really didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. And at that point, my parents had politely kicked me out of the house, said, if you're not going to go to college, then you got to, we'll pay for your health care, because your health benefits, because we know you won't. And, but if you move out, if you think you can make it as an artist, and that's what I did. I moved out, and then I went traveling around the world for 8 months, just backpacking with my brother. And that taught me one of the greatest lessons in my life. One of my biggest fears in life was, what if I don't make it as an artist? What if none of this works out for me in this life as an artist? And when I traveled the world and saw how so many other people lived and everything else, and became so accustomed to different cultures, I realized that I have enough friends and enough family that if anything ever goes on, I know that I could get my feet back up and start. And I saw so many people who had nothing, who were so happy and joyful. And I realized that that's what this is all about. This life is about joy. It's about finding your own joy. It's not about possessions. It's not about certain things. It's about what is that thing that's going to provide you with the happiness. And then I would start building. When I came back, I start putting together promotional material for myself. This would be something I would send to all the party planners, people who are booking events for weddings, bar mitzvahs, conventions, and let them know that I was a caricature artist. And then at the bottom, I would just put a stamp with my phone number, because I kept moving around. I never had a real home so much anymore. I was always from one apartment to the next, and I had different phone numbers. This was before cell phones. So I would just put a stamp with my phone number of that current address. That way I didn't have to throw away all my marketing material, so that I could save some money. But then I would start getting jobs doing that. And then I decided, my parents were always very, they always supported me in the way. They always said, hey, Stephen, what's going on? What's happening? Hey, here's an article. They'd always send me newspaper articles. And at the time, it was like 1996, 97. And there was an animation boom. Lion King had just come out. And they said, do you want to, they sent me that article, and I thought, I'm going to try to reach out to someone that I met in the animation industry and see what this is all about. Maybe I could get a job. I don't know. I was so naive, but that's where a lot of times you want to do stuff just to do stuff. And there's a saying like, better to ask for forgiveness than permission. And it's not that you're going to ask for permission for everything. It's like, I'm just going to do stuff. And then maybe someone say, no, you can't do it that way. And then I'm going to go, oh, sorry, I didn't know that. But I reached out to someone that I met in animation. They worked on a show called Freakazoid. They worked at Warner Brothers, and they invited me up to the studio, and I showed them my portfolio. I didn't want to pay for my own black portfolio. I just wanted to make sure that I was just, it was they were expensive. They're about $40-$50. I'm like, I'm just going to make my own portfolio. And that became distinctive, where today things can get lost. Back in the day, when you submitted to the studios, you just submitted your physical portfolio. You don't do that anymore. And the first show that I got hired on was a show called Hysteria, where it had all my caricatures. That's what I was really focusing on. My main focus was doing caricature, and they saw the caricature in my portfolio, and they gave me a test, as all the studios will do. They'll give you a test to see if you can adapt to the style. And then that's what got me the job. And then a friend of mine told me, hey, they're looking for a character design on a show called Clerks with Kevin Smith. He's doing an animated series. You should submit your work. And I did, and they gave me a test, and then they hired me as the lead designer to design this show, Clerks, the animated series, and that was over at Disney. And these were just some of the designs, just having to working on, you have to do your own cleanup. This was for a t-shirt design. Again, another case of drawing through my shape. Just want to know what's actually that whole form is actually happening with there. This was one of the designs that got me the job, where I had to design this guy from James Bond. He was going to be the bodyguard in the episodes. And they liked what I did, and that's what got me hired doing that. And then I kept a relationship with Kevin Smith and kept working on with him with these Clerks in action figures that we ended up doing. Once that show ended, I ended up moving on to another show. So this whole industry is about making friends. It really is. It's about knowing people. It's about having confidence so that you talk to people. You're not being shy. You meet people, and they were looking for a character designer for Weekenders. It was going to go into the second season, and that's when I went on to the second season of Weekenders. It's very important to be versatile, no matter whether you're doing backgrounds, storyboards, prop design, character design. I don't care what it is that you do. You want to be versatile if you want to have longevity in this industry. If you're just doing one sort of style and one sort of way of drawing, it's going to be harder for you to actually get a job, because people are going to think that you can't do it, and they're not even going to test you. And after working on a season of this, my director that I worked with on Clerks said, hey, we're doing a show called Kim Possible. You want to take a stab at doing what this is? And I thought, yeah, this would be fantastic. And while I was working on Weekenders, I was coming up with a bunch of designs and development, and they loved what I was doing. And then they brought me on full time to design Kim Possible. And then that's where every week I would get, not every week, about maybe every 3 weeks, I would get a new script. And then they would break down the script, and it would tell me how many characters I need to design. You need to do turnarounds, expressions, attitudes. This was some very early visual development for Kim Possible, for Draken. We didn't know what Draken was going to look like. I didn't know what he was going to look like. No one did. That's your job as a character designer. You're on the front lines, so to speak. You're the one who's there to sort of set the template, to be the problem solver, come up with the solution of what the show style is going to look like if you're coming on from the very beginning. And then we start to adapt from there. And it wasn't until I was just starting to do, and I did hundreds of designs. And then this was one that was getting really close. And then we just shortened his jaw. These would be notes from the directors. They say, hey, let's shorten his jaw or do something like that. And that's where this whole styles just started to evolve from. But you're going to be responsible for drawing just everything from animals to insects, you name it, whatever it is, you're going to have to do it. And that's going to be just a very important thing, just to learn how to draw as many things as possible. And it's okay to pull out reference and keep learning and keep studying. And I would encourage you to keep studying and keep learning and doing all these things. That way you're not just looking at other people's work all the time. You're not just flipping through Instagram and Facebook or any other thing all the time, looking and wishing, oh my gosh, I wish that was me. I wish I could do it. It's like you need to actually do it. You need to physically do it. It's the reason why I set up my art school, because to make it online was just to make it so that people could have quick lessons and learn and draw every single day, because you have to do that. And if you don't do that, you're denying yourself the ability to eventually get hired in this industry. You can see I've had to draw many different, this is the main front 3/4 view pose, which is the most important view for a character designer to draw. But you can see all the different characters and the shape variation and drawing hands and drawing feet and just giving these characters some life and expression and attitudes. That's where the feeling comes in. So when you look at these people, you get a feeling. When you look at these fishermen down here, you get a feeling of who they are. There's a real character there. They're not just generic looking characters. They're not stiff and boring and has all the elements of bad design, which could just happen very easily. The next show I worked on was a show called Replacements. Again, you can see just switching up the style. I'm working on a whole different style completely. And then after that, I left and went to Nickelodeon, where I got the chance to design Danny Phantom. And that was another great show. I was at Nickelodeon for about 4 years. And I was on there again, same thing, getting a script, breaking down characters, showing it to the director, getting approval. And the director who I was working with all the time was Butch Hartman, who was the creator of Fairly Odd Parents and Danny Phantom. So he would, while me and another designer were designing, we would take our designs like you do in all the process, show you director, and get approval and say, yeah, I like that direction or I don't like that direction, back to the drawing board. And that's something that you really got to build is a thick skin. You cannot be sensitive at all in this industry, really. And I say that because you're going to have people telling you, no, this is wrong. This doesn't work. And you can't be offended by that, especially when you know that there's many chefs in the kitchen and you're being hired by them and the client is always right. Always remember that no matter what you do, just make sure you work out a good deal with the client. That way you're not doing revision after revision where you're eventually getting 2 cents an hour. So you got to set those precedents up. This is some early Danny Phantom development. Again, didn't know what the show was going to look like. Didn't know. I knew that Butch was going to eventually want his sensibilities. This was some of my earliest stuff, but Butch still wanted, and there's more Fairly Odd Parents looking because that's how he knew how to draw. And that's where that eventually would start to get a little bit more Fairly Odd Parents looking. But this would be an example of like what I would show the director. I would take these, I got to do a ghost lunch lady. I'd do some versions, depends on how much time I have, 2, 3, 4 versions, and then show it to them. And once getting approved, then I would go to final. Usually there was always on that show, Danny Phantom, there was a cleanup crew and all they did was cleanup. So there's jobs where you're just doing cleanup and that's what they would do. And then you got the color stylist. If you love color, all they do is color. They color the characters, they color the props, they color the backgrounds, and that's what they work on. And this would be another thing that I would show. So I would, this would be my final rough. And my color, if I was going to just try doing some color, and then it would go to the cleanup department and then the color department, and they would do whatever color they felt was going to match the background. So you can see this different color background through there. That's to know that we're going to place this character in that color type of background. That way we know the character is going to stand out and be able to read, because we don't want to have red or green in the background because all of a sudden you're going to lose elements of that character. And then I also worked on Fairly Odd Parents for a while too. So it's being able to adapt, just going back and forth. And this is production work. This is the stuff that you're doing day to day. You don't want to put together a portfolio just full of clean, finished, rendered artwork. It's not what people are looking for. They want to see your energy. They want to see the life. They want to see the rough variations and drawing on Post-it notes and things like that. Again, this was all pre-drawing on the computer and the Cintiq and doing things like this. So it's, again, very important just to build up your skill set of design and understand that in order just to have better drawings. And then I went to Sony Feature Animation, where I was working on a show called Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. This was an early variation of it. I was there for about a year just doing a lot of development, and then the CG model would build the character from there. But that would be my 2D drawing, coming up with ideas, again, just drawing people, observing, looking at reference, looking at books, looking at photos of people, just trying to get inspiration wherever I can. A lot of these are old actors that you wouldn't even recognize, but that people that I'm sort of manipulating their faces, and then you start to add character and expression. This is another major role of the character designer, to add that. And so here's some more just little visual development for just trying to come up with the characters. These were done in markers and pencil. Again, just using traditional medium. This was, and it's important to do that. Don't just use the computer all the time. You want to learn how to draw with your hand, and that's why you draw in a sketchbook. And then I worked on shows like Penguins of Madagascar at Nickelodeon, the Cleveland Show, a primetime show called As the Wrench Turns. On the Penguins of Madagascar, these were different designs that I would do where I was having to just create some quick visual development, show it to the director. Again, I didn't have to spend as much time on them because they were going to be built CG. So I eventually had to do the turnarounds and everything else. And then I did development for a Netflix show called Hotel Transylvania. And then last year I was working on a show called The New Scooby-Doo, where my caricature role came back in, where now I'm designing caricatures of people. Again, caricature always stuck with me, but caricature and character design are really one and the same. It's the same thing. If you understand caricature, then you can caricature, and that's going to be very important. So I've always had work where people have hired me just to do character design and caricature. And then I just started designing all my own sort of shows. Like if I were to do my own animated series of, say, like Game of Thrones and things like that, it was just for my own personal fun and take. I just sort of loved doing this stuff. And then I also drew for Mad Magazine. They're no longer around anymore, but luckily I got to work with the main guys over when they were in New York, and was doing some Mad Magazine for a couple of years. So that was a really great time. And then these are all my own, just again, personal project. If they, I sell prints of these on my website. If you guys are interested in having a signed print, feel free, just reach out. Little plug there. But so my kids, they love these shows, and I started watching them and loved them. And then that's how I just start building my caricature just around them. And then Breaking Bad, Stranger Things, and just having just a lot of fun with it. And this is what I was just doing, really just my whole career, is just constantly observing and learning and drawing. And just wrapping up here, and we'll get into Q&A. I just want to share again with you guys, I'm running a Kickstarter. There's only 6 days left. But for my school, where you're going to get an extra bonus 8-week character design course, and I'm going to ship you out a drawing caliper, and it's only for $99 for a whole year membership, including over 300 videos, and you're going to get critiques and monthly live drawing sessions where we all get together and draw live. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. So if you have time, please go ahead and take a look at the Silver Drawing Academy. So I'm going to get off of here, and then I think we can just open it up to some Q&A. Let me just stop the sharing.
Yeah, I mean, that was awesome. And I also love like a lot of those cartoons. So that is really awesome, Stephen. Cool. So I would encourage all students who is interested, definitely turn on your video so Stephen can see your faces. It really calls back to what he was talking about knowing people, making relationships. It's hard to make a relationship with a little circle and initials. So I'm going to turn it over to you, the students, to ask questions. And yeah, any questions for Stephen? Malik.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. My question would be, right now I'm actually working on an short animation for my final senior project, and I'm having difficulty deciding should I do the straight ahead animation method or the pose to pose animation method. I was curious to know, how do you decide which one to use depending on the scene?
Well, I mean, I think that just the most important thing when you're just going to be animating just in general is just working. You just got to work out the thumbnails. You just got to work from the feeling. The best thing to do there was an artist by the name of Seamus Culhane, and he was a Disney artist, and he wrote a book on animating. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he talked about when he was animating, you just going from pose to pose, but you're drawing so quickly that don't even allow yourself to pick up your pencil. Stop self-correcting, right? Stop trying to just correct everything, erase things. So the most important thing is just create your scene, just create the key frames. Don't worry about all the in-between, right? You don't need to worry about that right now. Just what's the story? What are you trying to say? This person is waking up and now they're getting up out of the bed and putting on their slippers or something like that. So just showing those key actions, or someone grabbing something, but don't get caught up in all the little nuances leading you up there, especially in the very beginning.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Any other questions? Again, guys, don't be shy or blue. This is your opportunity. I'm here. There's only 20 of you guys. This is like very special right now. And so if you are, I've done everything in this industry. And it's just, if this is, again, whether you want to get into graphic design, if you want to get into animation, what jobs you want to get into, the most important thing that you guys can do is, number one, is you have to be inquisitive. And why I say that is because if you're not inquisitive, you're never going to find the answers to the questions that you have. It could be as simple, because you do it all the time. You may go, I want to learn about, you type in anything and you do a Google search, right? You type it in, you're asking a question and it will give you the answer back. It's the same thing with your career. If you don't know what questions to ask or have the questions, then oftentimes you're just not going to keep growing. Because you don't realize that if that question isn't like, how do I approach drawing, observing people better? It could be as simple as that. But if you're not even thinking that, well, then you're not even going to do it. You're not even taking that action to start just observing people. And as most of you guys, if you're doing animation, you have to be observers of life beyond all. You got to be drawing and capturing people in your sketch, but you got to know what that old woman looks like when she's crossing the street with the bags of groceries in her hand. You got to look at that homeless guy on the street who's just laying down and just like, just in a daze or just sleeping and just curled up in a corner, and what that feels like, because this is what animation, storyboarding, character design, graphic design, it's all about feeling. It's about conveying a feeling, and even of a product. In graphic design, you want to know when you look at a graphic design that it conveys a feeling to you and that it resonates with you and it says something in order to get people to respond to it. And that's going to be very important. And I know I'm sort of throwing it on you guys like, hey, where's the question? Have questions, ask a question. But I will just want to say, have questions even when you're going to go to conventions in the future, when you're going to meet people. Don't show up at a convention, to a comic convention or an animation convention, with no questions to ask a specific artist. You want to go there and they're going to feel like, oh, this person's inquisitive. You're going to get the answer, and then you're going to know what to do. And it is only going to benefit you. And you got to get more comfortable in your own confidence, because that's what it's about. There's no stupid questions. They're just on. And always remember, the worst thing that anyone is ever going to say to you is no. That's the worst they're going to say to you. That's the worst they're going to do. Really, in the world we're living in, the worst they're going to do is say no. I remember when I was younger, I was 18. I was terrified. I wanted to set up at a shopping mall and do caricatures there. And I had to meet with the big cheeses, the people wearing suits and ties. I'm like, oh my God, I got to have a meeting with these people, and they're terrifying. I'm scared to death. I'm just 18. And my dad came in, saw me moping around, and he said, what are you sitting there moping around for? What's your problem? I said, I'm scared to go talk to these people. What if they reject me? What if they say, I sound like George McFly, what if she says no? And it's just one of these things where, what if they say no? And it was like terrifying me. And he said, listen, what are your biggest fears? What do you fear right now? And I said, well, I would hate to be stabbed. I think that would be horrible. I don't want that feeling. And I would hate to drown. I think that would be the worst death ever, to drown. And he said, listen, when you go into that meeting today, if those are your fears, are they going to drown you? No. Are they going to stab you? No. The worst they're going to do is say no. They're going to say, no, we're not interested in it. And that's what you always got to remember. Every time you guys want to just move into this career, when you guys are working with clients, ask the questions, because you're going to end up getting a client offering you to do something. And if you don't know exactly what they want and you didn't ask the right questions, then that job can end up getting to be sometimes a nightmare. All right. So I'll leave it at that. So again, if you guys have questions. Yeah.
It looks like Avery has a question. We'll go with Avery first.
Hey.
Hi. When I'm drawing, I tend to get too caught up in the construction of forms, and it can make things look stiff. Do you know ways that I could make my drawings more fluid?
Yeah, one of the things that I do is I just draw, number one, with a pen. So drawing with a pen will build up your confidence. So you're not just doing it on the computer, but also you're doing a lot more timed poses. So you have to restrict yourself, and that may be on your own phone, where maybe you're going to bring up some photographs of people or gestures or something you find, and time yourself 1 minute. There's a lot of different timed things that are out on the internet right now. But again, you can do this for yourself. And I think it's a great way just to sort of like really draw, move through your lines and try to just loosen up. And that's the best thing to do, because you have to. Otherwise, you do get sort of really slow. You're trying to get too meticulous with the construction, and it ends up killing your drawing, and it takes all the life and feeling out of it. So that's why one of the things that I talk about in my book, I have a thing in my course, it's called With the Silver Way, are these 5 elements that I work with. And number one is story. What is the story? First and foremost, what am I trying to say? Oh, this person is sitting at a bench and they're very tired looking, right? I can't just say someone's sitting at a bench. Well, is someone sitting at a bench listening attentively? Is someone sitting at a bench drinking a milkshake? What's someone doing sitting at? So what's the story? The next thing, when you understand the story, then you're drawing in your gesture. You're getting that gesture. You get the feeling, the emotion behind the character. So then you got your story, gesture. The next thing is the design, where you start thinking about, well, this person's wearing a baseball cap and they're wearing a t-shirt, and I'm starting to just to think about, they got a mustache, and I'm starting to think about design elements. Then the next thing is the construction. That's the form. So that's number 4. That comes into the 4th part. I'm not even worried about it till phase number 4. And then once I start to now draw over it, I'm putting in more of my form. My very last phase is the details. That's where you're worried about your cleanup line. That's where you're worried about your color and all that other stuff. Again, this is what you're going to want to do and show people, especially if you're trying to get in an industry studio job, whether you want to be a prop designer, background designer, character designer. It's all the exact same stuff. You want to show all the process and just don't show the finals too. Okay.
Nice.
Thank you.
Carolina, I think you had your hand raised.
Okay, there you go. Can you hear me?
Hello.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So what do you recommend putting in like a portfolio when you're applying to different internships, or maybe like as like a starter job? Because I've heard different things like, oh, you don't want to put all your good work in there. You just want to put like, like some, but then like kind of like show them what else you can do. And I've heard that if you want to go in for a specific position, then make it specifically for that, or just like put in your best work. And so there's a lot of responses that I've heard. So what would you say?
Yeah, so what I say is it's very simple in the fact, well, it's not simple because people don't always know what they want to do, but you have to know the narrative, right? You got to say, I'm applying as a character designer. I'm applying as a storyboard artist. I'm applying as a prop designer. Be specific, because the studios are hiring specific roles. Most studios, they're not, unless they're a very small studio or a game studio, I won't hire a generalist. The generalist is someone who's doing a bunch of different things, but all the major studios want the person who's good at that specific skill. Once you've determined that, the next thing is absolutely put in all your best stuff, but make sure you're showing the variety and the versatility. So maybe, let's just say character design. You're showing me primetime animation looking designs. You're showing me preschool animation looking stuff. You're showing action adventure looking stuff. Same thing with props and backgrounds and color. It's all the same stuff. So you just want to show your versatility in there. And then again, don't just show the polished stuff, show the polished along with the development through there. That's going to be very important. And like I showed you some of the production stuff, like even on the Fairly Odd Parents, they're very loose. You got to show that you can do that. And that's what you want to put in your portfolio if you're trying to get an actual job as an artist. If you're trying to get an internship or try to get on production, like a studio is hiring because they're looking for a production coordinator or something like that, my advice has been, because some of my good friends who are in those positions told me, they work at some of the major studios, they said they don't want to see someone trying to get a production job, like being a production coordinator or something, where you're breaking down scripts or you're helping in the back end, not the artwork related. They don't want to see that your first and pure love is art, because they know you're going to get distracted. They want you to be the person who's going to be, no, I want to learn about the production. I want to learn about the pipeline. I want to learn how this happens and how it works. And you show that interest even in the interview, over not just saying, well, I want to be an artist and I'm coming to the studio and I just want to do this. And, because then they're like, nah, I kind of want someone who's going to be more geared towards just following the pipeline area. So that would be something just to keep in mind. Okay.
And I think I see Nicole, you typed in a question. Did you want to unmute and ask your question?
Sure. So I was wondering, I know especially with the advent and the use a lot of the CGI stuff, would you recommend like certain skills? Are there ones that you think are kind of a gap when it comes to the technology end of animation, as kind of a development of that broader skill set? Because I know doing stuff by hand is great, but we don't necessarily want to maybe limit ourselves to just doing the paper portion.
Right, absolutely. So where the paper stuff never goes away is all in the concept art phase, right? Where you're doing the development, where you're storyboarding, where you're doing this. Again, you may be using software where you're using Storyboard Pro or something like that, and you're doing storyboards, but the drawing aspect for working in the studios, whether you want to be a character designer, prop designer, all that will never go away. With animation, physical animation, if that's what you're going to be doing, absolutely, you got to know what's everyone doing right now, where the majority of it is CG. So you're going to want to be able to understand that. I have personally seen and found that some of the best CG animators out there are the traditional animators, right? They're the ones who really understood how to draw and how to see things and how to move things, and they were great observers of life. And that's always going to replace the technology, because the technology keeps switching. Right now, it's this. Next year, it's going to be something else, and it's going to be something else. But are you just going to rely on using that technology, or are you going to rely on the fundamentals and always know that I know how to animate, whether it's in Flash, whether it's in Toon Boom, whether it's CG, what it's going to be, whether I'm modeling in ZBrush, whatever it is, those constantly change. So why I say the focus really is going to be what I would say for anyone who wants to get into those areas. Just don't neglect the drawing aspect. Don't neglect learning those things, because that will always guide you 20 years from now, when it's completely different, when it's going to be like, well, you're just going to sculpt and animate with your eyeballs. You're just going to move your head and boom, wow, it's there. You're going to touch a button and it's there. It's like things are going to change. But today we see a lot of still the Toon Boom, Flash, like Titmouse and studios like that are using a lot of that. But yeah, learning the CG over traditional, right? Traditional animation, you can say, unfortunately, in this country, is kind of dead unless it's a real smaller studio. In Europe, it's still very much alive with a lot of studios out there, which is awesome. Is always a great thing. Like in Asia, it's still alive, right? It's just out here right now, it's kind of going to the wayside, where you're going to be hired based on your ability to animate using a computer program.
Nice. All right, my friends, I'm sorry to say this, but we have reached the end of our time today with Stephen. I'm going to hit stop recording. So that way, boop, okay.